think Alan Keyes is a very bright guy. I think he's very quick, very sharp, and he's very well spoken. But he has one fatal flaw. He's absolutely batshit insane. And there's a fantastic clip of him in a debate with Obama, back when they were both running to be the US Senator for Illinois, that just beautifully demonstrates how his loquacity is outmatched only by his insanity.
Mr. Keyes, on the Channel 7 debate last Thursday night, you said, and I'm quoting you, where procreation is in principle impossible, marriage is irrelevant. You went on to say it was irrelevant and not needed. What about marriage between people who are well beyond their childbearing age? Irrelevant, not needed?
No, it's simply a misunderstanding. The word in principle means relating to the definition of, not relating to particular circumstances. So if an apple has a worm in it, the worm is not part of the definition of the apple. It doesn't change what the apple is in principle.
If a couple is infertile because they're beyond their childbearing years, then they are incapable of having children in principle. In fact, they're incapable of having children by definition. That's what infertile means.
Irrelevant
Human
and not needed.
beings reason by means of concepts and definition. We also make laws by means of definitions. And if you don't know how to operate with respect for those definitions, you can't make the law. An individual who is impotent or another who is infertile does not change the definition of marriage in principle. Because between a man and a woman, in principle, procreation is always possible. And it is that possibility which gave rise to the institution of marriage in the first place.
I'll put a link in the description to a video by ProfMTH in which he talks about how procreation is not the historical basis of marriage. This is a load of disingenuous bullshit that conservatives like to spout nowadays. I say disingenuous because I don't think that even conservatives believe that the fact that two people who want to get married want to share their lives together, regardless of whether they procreate or not, has absolutely nothing to do with why we make certain tax and property law exceptions for them. Conservatives expect us to believe that the most important thing about marriage is that a couple can have children. And if you bring up the fact that we allow couples who don't want to have children or simply can't have children to still get married, they rationalize that by saying, yeah, but they still have genitals that fit together in such a way that in the abstract they are capable of producing children. It has absolutely nothing to do with people committing themselves to each other romantically. Seriously? Come on, conservatives, do you really believe that the fact that two people love each other and want to share their lives with each other is not in and of itself a valid basis for marriage? Do you really think that society does not take that at all into account when we endorse and congratulate a couple's decision to get married? That it does not at all contribute to the value of marriage independent of procreation? Because if that's the case, then a marriage between two people who don't love each other, who are just getting married because they want to have kids in a way that society deems acceptable, is more praiseworthy than a marriage between two people who genuinely love each other but choose never to have children. The conservative perspective seems to be that a loveless procreative marriage serves society better than a genuinely loving childless marriage.
And that means that if you say that that's a marriage, you are saying marriage can be understood in principle apart from procreation. You have changed its definition in such a way as, in fact, to destroy the necessity for the institution. Since the only reason it has existed in human societies and civilizations was to regulate, from a social point of view, the obligations and responsibilities attendant upon procreation. So when you start playing games in this way, you are actually acting as if the institution has no basis independent of your own arbitrary whim.
You know, this is the kind of argument that I hear from conservatives all the time. They're always saying that if you make even the slightest change to the definition or application of some traditional institution or principle to account for special circumstances or context, then you are simply blowing the doors way open to complete and utter arbitrariness and caprice. To them, any and all innovation is inherently a degradation. That seems to be the conservative mindset. There's no such thing as progress, and that any change that is not regressive is undesirable. But my favorite part of the debate is when Keyes tries to argue that we shouldn't allow lesbians to have children because they use sperm donors, and if they use sperm donors, then you're not going to know who your siblings are.
Now, if you don't know and have no way of ascertaining who your father is, then you can't know who your sisters and brothers are either. And if you can't know who your sisters and brothers are, there is no way you could avoid having sexual relations with them. And so logically speaking, excuse me,
There is no way you can avoid having sexual relations with your siblings if you don't know who they are. That's right, Alan, if you have siblings that you don't know about, it is inevitable that you will fuck them. And yes, I know that's not literally what he meant, but that's what it sounds like he's trying to say, and I think that's the impression that he is deliberately trying to give. He's trying to be as alarmist as possible. Also, I love the look on Obama's face when he realizes that Keyes is clearly suffering from some kind of paranoid psychosis. But you gotta give Alan Keyes credit, the guy's got spunk. To this day, he is still saying incredibly batshit ridiculous things as if he is the sanest person in the world and everybody else is crazy. And this despite the fact that in that election, Obama beat him by getting 70% of the vote.